Repeating myself again, he had forgotten that I had co-signed. Dave was not a detail man, and well, God bless him. I won't stick any pins in him, but you guys all know him. As long as he had his pipe to smoke and could do his yoga and other things, he didn't pay a lot of attention to detail. Thank God for Lydia that could fix cars and take care of things. But nevertheless, frantic telephone calls, letters, and so on, and he finally straightened the whole thing out. Whether he ever, I think he lost his shirt on his parachuting idea. But I think while he was there, that's when he went to work for the Coon laundry company, and then got involved with the Pride Odorite there in Puerto Rico, before he got snookered by the guy that he sold it to when he bought out the guy in Dallas and moved to Dallas. Enough about Uncle Dave. I'm having a hard enough time telling you about me without getting into all the rest of the family. Rest of the family. I did mention Doug earlier regarding Betty Jane teaching him math. He was single for a long time, lived at home, spent most of his time, I think, working at Bethlehem Steel, and that's another story in itself, where he worked a third shift and slept most of the time out there because the union protected him and had crazy rules as to how you did the testing on steel. And spent most of the evenings, I think he went to work at midnight or 11 o'clock and got off at 7 o'clock in the morning. But I think he spent most of his time at the racetrack because he was a real horse lover. Dave and I were here, criticized Mom and Dad for babying him and giving in to all, not requiring him to do anything. He was just a fun-loving young guy. And as long as you got nothing else better to do than to listen to this, and I get off on tangents, one of the benefits of selling insurance was the conventions that we had for probably 4 or 5 days or a week. And I went downstairs just a moment ago to try and find the listings of places that Mom and I went, and many of the times, the conventions, we had two in Bermuda, many in the Caribbean, the various islands, some in Florida, one in Colorado Springs, which was a joy because in Colorado Springs is where many of the Olympians train, because there's a big ice skating facility out there. And Mom was thrilled because when I went to a meeting, one morning, she and a couple of the other wives went over to the ice skating rink. She rented a pair of skates, and she was skating. And she was thrilled because she had never been exposed to skating or ice or that type of recreation, but she was thrilled to be able to put on a pair of skates and do it. Poor kid, her ankles were very weak, and she had a heck of a time keeping the skates straight up and down, but she stumbled and had a good time. We did go to Hawaii. I think we passed through into Hawaii twice, I think it was. We went to, stayed over in San Francisco on the way to Hawaii, which broke the trip up, and we were able to spend some time at Fisherman's Wharf and see the sights of Frisco, in addition to staying at 2 different locations in Hawaii. I think one of the mini conventions was at the Hershey Hotel in Hershey, Pennsylvania, and I'm trying to think of other. Oh, Acapulco. We went to Acapulco also. I don't think it was Acapulco, but I think it was one of the Caribbean islands that we went to, and God bless my mother and father who took care of you guys while we were gone. Without them, I don't think we could have afforded it, because we scrimped and saved and tried to figure out a way to get enough money to go on these conventions. I think my way was paid, and I think they jackassed around to a point where they almost gave us enough money to bring a spouse along. On one of the occasions, and Donald, you may have some recollection of this, on one of the occasions we came back and we were sick. We had dysentery. We were running back and forth to the bathroom, and I think Paul was, so it had to be in the 60s, mid 60s sometime. As I say, I've got a list of when we went where, someplace. I thought it was down near the pictorial, or the picture albums, but I went down, I couldn't find it. But it's almost immaterial where we went and when we went. But God bless you, Donald. You were just old enough to be able to take care of your younger brother to a certain degree, and even help us. We didn't. All we needed was soup and water, and the ability to run back and forth to the bathroom. But you were a big help, Don. What reminded me of Clinton Blanford was today is July the 13th, 2005, and I just saw an article in the paper regarding the West Side Rowing Club, and Clint, our cousin, Clinton Blanford, who lives in Clinton, Iowa. Betsy, his wife, passed on earlier this year. He's in a nursing home right now. He's 90 years old, and Libby, his daughter, who's the one who lived in El Paso and now lives in Austin near her daughter and grandson, her grandchildren. He and I keep in touch, and as I say, West Side Rowing Club, and there was an article in the paper which I just sent to him today. So he and I have corresponded, and I tried to keep his spirits up by calling him every once in a while. And how did I get off on this tangent? I don't know. I guess it was because Clint and Betsy would come here to visit a younger brother, Raymond, who has already passed on, and was actually very disappointed because his nephews, Bobby and Joe, and I don't know all their names, there was a bunch of them, never paid much attention to Uncle Clint, and I think that bothered him. He'd try to get them on the phone or talk to them or write to them, and they would never respond. I had a similar experience with them when I did the genealogy thing and called them and said, geez, you might be interested. Oh, Uncle Don, yeah, we're really interested. I'll give you a call. Never heard a word from him. So, different kind of family, and different needs, not similar to mine. But Clint and Betsy would come and visit us and stay over with us, and it was always a joy to see them. They were just a lovely, 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 lovely couple. I've already talked about his younger brother, John Russell, in not too favorable terms, and God bless his younger brother, Raymond. Both Russ and Raymond are gone now. But Raymond was the auto mechanic that used a lot of baling wire and tape. This, when I think of some of the subjects that I've covered in this conversation, a great deal of it is probably stuff you're not really that interested in, but here it is. If anybody is getting tired of listening to this, blame your baby brother Larry, because he's the one that got me into this. I've probably should have done this on one or two sides of one tape, but I think now I'm on number 13. So as I say, if you're getting tired of listening, fast forward and or blame your brother Larry. Now, I've got so many notes to myself here about various things that occurred. Let's see. I jumped fast forward. Let me look at some of my notes. I can remember, Donald, I think in one of your elementary school or junior high school down at Ben Franklin, I think it was junior high school, I think you were put on some honor roll, and Mom and Dad went down. We went down to see you get a pin or a plaque or something. I think this was before that you found out that Budweiser made that stuff. You probably studied well and did very well. I didn't realize that your grades were so good. I think Rick Coates was the assistant principal. He probably had something to do with your achieving all these wonderful things. But we were very proud. Let's see, in no particular order, I remember when you were very involved, Don, and I think Paul too, with the Cub Scouts. I remember Mom was a Cub Scout mother, and had the meetings there and put things together so that the kids would have something to do, and she would have been a marvelous teacher. She would have been a marvelous teacher. She made for you, I think when you were just a small tyke, she made, and I spray painted silver, the Tin Man from the movie, and you went around on Halloween, I think, to put the Tin Man on the outside of your winter clothes. We had to adjust a lot of the attachments, but Mom was so creative, and she made so many of her own clothes because she was so capable in another area, that area. In fact, in making some of the dresses that she made when we went to convention or a party, it was almost sad because she worked on it so long and so diligently that by the time it came for the function for her to wear it, she was sick and tired of seeing it, whatever the material was. And of course she made an awful lot of shirts for you guys, and I think you went with her to help pick out the material, or she would take you to the material store and you'd yes, I like that, and so on. And she made some beautiful, more than T-shirts, and some of them had the round necks and some of them had the V-necks, and God bless her, she was such an accomplished woman. Let's see, what else? In no particular order, I remember you guys playing hide and seek, you and Bobby and Jimmy and all of our guys playing hide and go seek out in the front for almost every evening. You seemed to enjoy it, and you had a good time. I think when Larry was 3 or 4 years old, I think Paul, God bless you, Bubba, you were getting ready to go to school one morning and you could not find your shoes. And I don't know why you didn't wear your sneakers or whatever have you, but maybe Mom insisted that you wear your shoes. Well, we couldn't find your shoes. And I mean, we looked all over the house. And it wasn't until a few days later that we found that baby brother Larry had taken your shoes and threw them down the clothes chute. And I don't think it was until Mom was doing the laundry that she looked in the clothes chute, and there were the shoes. But it was you, Larry, that threw them down there. Probably, you know, not intentionally or whatever have you, just playing around or doing whatever. But I do remember that. I do remember also a time, I think it was in the early 70s, probably 73, when there was a big program on through the schools promoting Earth Day, and what we could do to help save the Earth, and I can remember being out in the garage. Maybe you guys were either older or away at school, or I don't think you were around, or you weren't home. And Larry was trying to convince me out in the garage that I ought to be quitting smoking. And he kept on and on and on as to why I should quit. And I kept telling Larry, you don't understand. You don't understand. This thing is it's got a hold of me, and it's something I can't seem to let go. He was very, very disappointed in his father. And I do remember another instance. You guys remember it because, Don, you got the Carmen Gia at some point to take up to college, but before you did, I remember when a friend of Grandma and Grandpa's lady's husband died, and he owned this Carmen Gia, which was nothing more than an Italian Volkswagen. And it was a sporty little thing, orange in color, and I think when we went out to see it, Mom and Dad said, because I think I needed a second car, you know, a replacement for one I had. And so Larry and Mom and I drove out to Grandma and Grandpa's out at Maine and Sheridan to see this Carmen Gia, and the price was right. But I do remember Larry getting in the car and looking in the back, because the back seat was nothing more than a little bench. And Larry started crying. And I couldn't understand why he was crying until we queried him a little bit more. And he said, Dad, that's where I got to sit. Well, it was nothing more than almost a rug on a seat platform. And he figured that's where he was going to have to sit very uncomfortably, poor kid. So, Larry, I'm blaming you for all these tapes and everything else, but you had some pain involved with this whole thing also. And I also recall myself and you three boys, and maybe even sometimes Bobby or Jimmy from next door, going out to Marge Breeze's out in Corkview, New York. And we'd go out there with a saw, and I think I had a couple Ford station wagons, the small one. Can't remember the name of it now. But, oops, telephone, hang on. Yeah, I just rewound and found out about the Ford. It was a Ford Falcon, was the car that we used. Well, anyhow, we all went out there one time, all bundled up, and we saw Marge and went out in the back and cut down a tree. But while we were there, and I don't think I ever got an answer to this question, while we were there, we put the tailgate down. And somebody was up sitting in the driver's seat, and there was a button where you could raise and lower the back window out of the tailgate. Well, somebody, and maybe if you guys ever get this far in this taping procedure, if you ever get this far and get to this point, maybe you'll remember the occasion and nobody fessed up, and maybe it was one of the other boys and maybe one of you guys, but nobody raised their hand and said, I did it. And maybe you were protecting somebody else that did it and didn't want to cause the other person problem by saying, oh, Bobby did it or Jimmy did it or whoever. I always wondered who the devil did that, but I never found out. I also remember looking in the newspaper and seeing different things that I could make with my limited woodworking capability. But I made, maybe you guys remember it, a giraffe that had horns sticking out of the head and a platform where you could put your shoes, or you could hang a shirt off the ears or off the horns or something along that line. I made one of those, and it was all painted white with the orange spots on it. And I remember, and I don't remember who it was, but I think one of you guys were excessively tired. And I think this happened on more than one occasion. I think on one occasion, somebody woke up in the middle of the night and started peeing on the giraffe's platform. And I think on another occasion, either the same boy or whoever peed in one of the dresser drawers. Just assuming that it was the bathroom, or you're just so exhausted or tired or dreaming or whatever it may have been. But one peed on the giraffe and the other one peed in the dresser drawer. God bless you. And as I recall, Larry tagged along with you guys on enough occasions going to Boy Scouts or Cub Scouts and meetings, and I think he didn't want anything to do with it. He'd already been through the whole process, even though he didn't get a uniform and a badge and what all that went along with it. But he had been to so many meetings with you guys that he didn't want any part of it, because it was all old hat to him. And God bless old Eddie Lang, who was the scoutmaster and down at the church, and he he didn't want to run any meetings. He just wanted you guys to have fun throwing balls at each other or jumping on mattresses or doing whatever. He was one of the most disorganized individuals I think I've ever met, but his heart was in the right place. And he let you guys do whatever you wanted to. Jack Stout and yourself, and I can't remember the names of all the other guys, but you do, and I remember that. I do also remember being the Cub Scout chairman for about 10 years. I got a plaque, and I think it's hanging up downstairs someplace. For 10 years I did that. And I do remember, you know, at so many times in organizations, they have various committees and various functions, and I found out early on that if you go to a meeting where the parents are all there, and in order to have a child in the Cub Scouts, one or more parents had to be at the meeting. And it didn't take me long to figure out that, like in any organization, about 10% of the people do 100% of the work, or 90%. And so what I did was, instead of having people raise their hands when I said, well, I need to have a chairman of the Pinewood Derby thing, or whatever else, Mother's Day function, or Blue and Gold, that was it, Blue and Gold dinner, nobody raised their hands. So what I devised was, and you might try this yourself, or grandchildren might try it, if you're in an organization, here's what I did. I came up with, if there were 20 kids in the group, I came up with 20 committees. And some of them were the chairman of the Blue and Gold dinner, and some of them were the chairman of the Pinewood Derby, and other ones were in charge of publicity or some insignificant committee. But if there were 20 kids, I had 20 committees. And all I did was, up in front, I would announce that I have 20 committees here, and whoever signs up, well, there's 20 of you here, and there's 20 committees. So whoever comes up and signs up for the committee that they want to head, that'll work out just fine. Well, you talk about a mad scramble. There were people almost running from their chairs to get up there and find some insignificant committee where they wouldn't have to do anything, and they were signing up for it. Unfortunately, those people at the end of the line, or who were slow getting up there, got the blue and gold dinner or the Pinewood Derby or whatever it might have been. But you got to have as many committees as you have people there. And when I mentioned Pinewood Derby, I do remember this. The first time we were involved with the Pinewood Derby, where they had the long runway and you had the cars all sanded and painted and the wheels on and all the directions of how to do this and how to do that, I must have spent totally a whole day, an hour here, an hour there, calling engineer friends of mine and saying, it says here that the weight of the car can be no more than this. Well, I would bring home the letter weighing machine from the office, and if when you put all the parts together and you found out that the thing weighed 6 ounces and the maximum was 10 ounces, then it was apparent to me, not having knowledge of it myself, but checking with various engineers that knew more about that sort of thing that I did, yes, the heavier the weight, the faster the car would go. So what I did was drill a hole in the under part of the car, and I asked the engineers too, I was going to put some weights in the car. Should I put it in the front? Should I put it in the back? Should I put it in the middle? So I got all this advice from brilliant engineer types, and we drilled a hole in the center, and I went to Kmart or someplace and got some lead fishing weights and hammered them to a point where they'd fit in this hole that I had drilled, and then put some wood putty below it. Well, then we spray painted the car, and Donald, as I recall, you won a trophy for winning the race, because with the car, with the lead weights, with the letter weighing scale, we come in at 9.8 ounces or something like that, just short of the maximum. Because if you were over, you got disqualified and thrown out. But I can remember after the race, some woman picking up your car, turning it over and saying, "Look, the guy has put something in here that isn't supposed to be here." And all I said was, "Look, ma'am, it says on the form that you are told how to make it and what to do and what not to do, that the maximum weight is thus and so. If you want to weigh it, here's a scale that I've got, so go ahead and weigh it." Well, her nose was way out of joint because somebody had paid attention to what the rules were, and she hadn't, and she thought her son was being denied some honor in the Pinewood Derby race because somebody else had cheated. And I didn't cheat, I just paid attention to what they said on the directions. I think too, Paul, I think you got involved in the races too, but by that time I think other people learned the same things that I did, or read the directions a little bit more carefully, and I don't recall whether you got a trophy or not. I think also one of the requirements for Boy Scouts merit badge had something to do with radio, or crystal radio, and I think Don or Paul, either one of us, not Larry, because he'd been, as I said before, he didn't want any part of Boy Scouts or Cub Scouts. but I think it was either Paul or Don who had to build or put together a crystal set. And we did. And we had to run a wire out the back window of your bedroom. And I can remember this was done like in January or February. And here was I trying to run a line from the window of the bedroom out to as high a point as I could get to, and here I was standing on the top of the chain link fence way back by the shed, and damn near fell and broke my neck because it was so icy and snowy, but I was bound and determined I was going to get this antenna out to a high point out in the backyard. I think I may have even attached it to the garage of the people behind us. I don't even remember their name right now. They were so, well, they were slow. But those were the fun things that I recall. You guys probably recall them also. I remember Paul getting bitten on by some dog in the paper route over kitty corner across from us. I think I may have gotten a couple nickels on that one, and I don't know whether I gave you any of the money or put any of the money in your account, Paul, or not, but I don't think I got very much. The tragic one was when Larry got bitten by that husky down on Lindale or someplace. That was really something. Maybe I'll get into that later. And Paul, I do remember you playing. I don't think you played baseball much, but I think, Paul, you did. And you were ready to volunteer for anything and everything, however dangerous it might have been. And I think you were the catcher on one of the teams. And I do remember one game that I went to down at Lincoln Park, and you were the catcher, and you weren't the fleetest of foot, but you were the catcher, and I think a ball got by you somehow, and somebody was on third base or second base coming around third base. Well, the ball got by you, went back to the backstop, and you ran back and got it, and ran forward and tagged the guy out before he got to home base. I can picture that in my mind as clearly as the day that I saw it. And you went like the devil. But catching didn't seem to be the most glamorous place on the team. But when somebody said, "Do you want to catch?" you said, "Yep." So you were an adventurous young man. And I do recall a number of things about you, Paul, who on the swimming team. Number one, and in fact, Dick Glore, a dentist friend of mine who's probably in his 80s now, his son, Gary, was it, who also swam with you on the swimming team, and you swam against a girl down in Lewiston Porter, and I think you touched out. In fact, Dick said this the other day, not more than a month or two ago. He said, "Don, you remember that meet down in Lewiston Porter?" And I said, "Yes, I do." He said, "Well," he said, "Paul won." He said, "But I think the referees gave it to the girl." And I said, "Yeah, I think so too." You may have remembered it that way too, Paul. I don't know. But soon after, because this was at a time when you guys all wear your hair very long, and I agonized over the fact that when you were in the pool and you were swimming, instead of just rolling your head to breathe on one side. You not only had to roll your head, but you had to throw your head up out of the water in order to get the hair out of your eyes so you could see where you're going. And knowing that 14 or 15 or 16-year-old kids, when the suggestion is made by their parents to do something, they're going to reject it right away. So I remember talking to you at the time and saying, Paul, in life there are followers and there are leaders. And I noticed that you're having a little bit of trouble keeping the hair out of your eyes when you're swimming. Now, the girls are probably more intelligent than the boys to begin with, but the girls wear caps because their hair is generally longer and maybe as long as yours or about the same length. And I said, if somebody was to ask one of the girls for one of their swimming caps and put it on so that the boy who did it wouldn't have to throw his head and get the hair out of his eyes so he could see where he was going, if that boy put on a bathing cap in the next meet, that person would be looked at funny for the first time, but then I'll bet you that person being the leader, other people would do the same thing. Well, damned if it didn't happen. You took the challenge. I was setting you up, really. I was trying to get you to wear a lady's swim cap, but if I came right out and told you to do it, you wouldn't have done it. So I appealed to your vanity and your attempt to be a leader. So you put on a ladies, a girl's swim cap in the next meet, and I don't know where you finished, but I imagine you finished fairly high. But you didn't have the problem with the hair in your eyes. And what do you know? Other guys did the same thing as you did, and they started wearing caps. God bless you, son. And there was another time, Paul, while in your swimming career in high school, at the Kenmore East Pool, and who you were swimming against, I don't know, but one of the divers either was sick or couldn't make it or had an upset stomach or what have you, and the coach, either you volunteered or the coach asked you, or somehow you ended up diving. Well, diving really wasn't your forte. Swimming was, but as most kids are in a pool, they're going to be doing diving and what along that line. And again, Dick Glore, whose son was on the team, and I think his name was Gary or Bruce, I don't know, but nevertheless, you were one of the two divers that evening, and damned if you didn't come in second. Well, Dick Glore thought that was the greatest thing, along with me. We both thought that was the greatest thing in the world. Your feet came over on occasions, and maybe you didn't go in the water just as straight as you could have, or as some other first diver would have. But you had the guts and the gumption to go ahead and do it, and you did it well, and I think you came in second. That's as I recall it. You know better than I. There are a number of things that I remember about 145 Conant. Putting the shutters up on each side of the door and the windows. Oh, I remember when we first moved in. Since Larry Ward worked for Glidden Company, I asked Larry Ward, again, because I didn't have any money, I was trying to save a couple nickels, if he could get me some shake and shingle paint. And he did, from the Glidden Company, and I got it, I'm sure, for a good price, and went ahead and painted the house. Well, the sad part of that whole thing was that the ingredients in Glidden's shake and shingle paint did not coincide with the paint that was already on there. It was called Mysticoat. I remember it very distinctly. Mysticoat was the shingle and shake paint that we got over at Hector's hardware store. They probably had an exclusive with Mysticoat. And if I've learned anything, you put the same manufactured paint on as a second coat as the first coat was. But I didn't know what it was. There was no cans around to indicate what it was. So I went ahead and painted the house. Well, over the winter, I got the greatest alligatoring effect on the shingles, mainly on the weather side, on the whirl side, on the south side, and on the front. Not as much on the back because that didn't get as much weather. But what I did was take one of the shingles off, gave it to Larry, said, send it up to Cleveland and see what the trouble is, what's the matter. And he came back, he finally got an answer, said you used the wrong paint. And the only way that I could get that taken care of was that I went to, I don't know how many quarter-inch drills I went through with the circular sandpaper, but I started up at the top and I sandpapered that entire side down to bare wood, and then put a coat of Mysticoat on it, and all the other locations that had the alligatoring effect on the wood shingles. And this, of course, was prior to subsequently siding the house. I keep talking about Mom and some of the brilliance and common sense that she had that I on occasions lacked. In our bedroom, we had the dormer between either side, and Mom kept saying, I think there's room back there to make a small closet or have some space for some additional storage. And no, honey, you can't, there wouldn't be anything back there. And she finally convinced me that I ought to at least look in there. And in fact, she mentioned it, or I mentioned it to John Worrell next door, and of course, you tell your wife, no, that wouldn't happen. But John Worrell came over, looked at it, and said, yeah, I think there's space behind there. You could probably utilize that. And I got one of those funny looks from your mother, saying, geez, you don't believe me, but you believe the next door neighbor. So anyhow, what I did was drill two relatively small holes in the side of the wall, put a flashlight in one hole and my eye in the other, and found out there was space behind there. And so from that point on, what I did was cut a hole in the plaster and called my friend Dick, and I'm trying to sit here and think of his last name, and I can't. It may come to me, but it doesn't make an awful lot of difference. But anyhow, he came over, saw what my problem was, and he went home after he took the measurements and the depths and whatever have you, and made a built-in dresser on the right-hand side of the dormer, and I cut a hole in the left-hand side and put insulation behind it, and not wanting to play with plasterboard, I think I used plywood. Put insulation behind it, put plywood in. I didn't want to use the saw up in the bedroom and get sawdust over everything, so I had to take this sheet of plywood or multiple sheets of plywood up and down the stairs, cut a little bit more here, put a pencil mark there, cut a little bit more off, take it back down, or bring it back up, try it, oh, got to take a little bit more off. Finally got it to a point where I got a closet on the left-hand side and drawers on the right-hand side. And this was all because of your mother insisting that there was space back there, and I, of course, not believing her. How can you believe a woman that doesn't know anything about that sort of thing? So all these years, you guys must have thought I was brilliant, and I was brilliant because I married your mother. That's how brilliant I was. And if I'd have paid more attention to her over the years, how much better off we all would have been. Dick Walgate, that was the man's name. And he used to put in tile, and he was a crackerjack. In fact, he's done work here at this house too, even though he's semi-retired. We also had a leak in the shower, and he came over, and he was the one who took out some of the tile out of the bathroom and bought compatible